Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. It's Alan Barry Labacan here from the Rocks and Stocks News website. We've got an exciting two guests today. Kelly Malcolm, and who's the technical advisor to Sterling Metals. And we also have Matt Wilson, who's the CEO of Sterling Metals. Earlier this morning, they put out quite a spectacular hole, 1,500 grams of silver, 5.84% copper, 29% zinc, 0.55 grams per ton of gold, and 7.8% lead. Those are some exciting numbers, especially if they can figure out the system and how it all got there, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Thank you very much for joining me, Matt and Kelly.
Thanks a lot. And don't forget about the antimony, Alan, which Matt can tell you about the economics of that.
Okay.
Because I'll be honest with you, I was surprised at the value of that commodity, which is actually better than copper in terms of dollar per ton basis.
Well, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for copper these days with the electrification of everything, and there's just not a lot of good copper discoveries. So maybe you guys are sitting on one. Matt, why don't you start things off? Let's lead off with the news today.
Yeah. So the news today was. So we put out news today that kind of follows up on what we put out a couple weeks ago. And what we put out a couple weeks ago was the first hole of kind of the second phase of our drill program. So this project that we're on here, I mean, when we got it, there was $1 million spent on it. It was only discovered at the end of 2016. And there is not one drill hole in this project. And it's a 12-kilometer long giant soil anomaly with outcrop everywhere.
Who did you
and
get
it's
it
hard
from again?
Pardon me?
Who'd you get it from again?
So we got it from the team at Altius Resources.
Altius, yeah.
So Altius, we granted them 19.9. They're still a big shareholder of ours. Have been really incredibly helpful for the project as well. And it's fortunate because their chief geologist actually lives about 3 hours south of the project, so it's been up and down to site. So it's been good for continuity. But you know, we're kind of all used to these days projects that are being recycled and old mines, and you know, the best place to find mineralization is always next door to something that you already know about. And this is new. This has never been really touched. There's not one drill hole on it. All we had was a bunch of trenching and geophysics and then soils. And I think that what we ended up doing is we drilled what's called 16 holes. You know, I think we spaced out a lot of the holes 500-600 meters just to kind of go across what we thought the host rock was going to be. And throughout those holes, the first 8 kind of came back, and you have these kind of nuggets of interesting mineralization. You have a meter of 600 gram equivalent, and we knew that there was better there. But then we sort of altered our program, and so that was what we ended up putting out the first hole last week or 2 weeks ago, where we saw this kind of 0.4 meter vein, this quartz vein, which held, I think it was about 600 grams silver, 15% zinc, 2% copper. So good grades. But what we had found on surface was something that we thought was even better. We thought that there was more to this project. We thought we could get denser mineralization. And so today's result was kind of following up, kind of showing that we kind of were starting to get an idea of what's going on. And we see these massive to semi-massive sulfide and narrow interval for sure. I mean, 0.35 meters, right? Like it's not that big, but when you look at it, the grades that you get out of that, I mean, you're talking about a pretty rich system. And then when you put it into context of the 12-kilometer strike length, the fact that this has never been drilled and we're just sort of getting a handle on it now, I think that's why we're so excited about the release we put out today. And I think that as we continue to mention in the press releases, you know, we're seeing more continuity of veining. We're seeing better brecciated areas, and I think that we're starting to kind of get a handle on where the tail is that we can kind of chase on this thing. And I continue to talk about one of the analogies that comes out with this project, which is Keno Hill. And I mean, Keno Hill was 8 mines along a 12-kilometer strike, and you know, 7 of them were under 500,000 tons. So you don't need a lot when you have grades like this to create a pretty cool kind of string of pearls configuration for a district size play. So we're really pumped, and you know, anything more technical than what I just said, we're going to turn it over to Kelly.
No, I'll do something less technical. Something to point out is that the rock that was released on, so that 0.34 was part of a composite of better than 5 meters. But even just looking at that that narrow interval, which was the massive sulfide within that overall interval, it was better than $3,000 Canadian rock, which even if you dilute times 10 to get sort of a 3.4 meter mining width, that's better than $300 rock, which is all you need to make a significant mine nowadays. Plus there's, and we put this in our press release, put some nice photos of different styles of mineralization. One being quartz vein hosted massive to semi-massive high grade mineralization, but there's a significant amount of lower grade mineralization hosted in this, not even vein hosted, it's sulfides within the host rock. And you can see a really neat photo, I think it was figure 1 from our release, that shows these crack hosted sulfide veinlets. And to me, that speaks to a broad system here that we are sort of expecting and hoping for punctuation by these high grade veins within that overall window of low grade mineralization. And then to speak to that even further, on I think figure 3 from our release, we put a cross section in, and you can see through the hole that we put out today, which was hole 23, there is silver, copper, base metal mineralization distributed throughout essentially 80 meters of that hole. And I think Matt was playing with the numbers, and it's something like 17 or 18 grams over that 80 meters of the overall window. And that's obviously far from economic, but the fact that we're seeing 80 meters of mineralization speaks to a big system with big potential. You and I both, Alan, like these big systems with high grade potential. And honestly, that's what attracted me to the project. I've put quite a bit of money into this to date, and continue to do so as the project advances.
It's actually 80 meters, 82 meters of, I think it was like 36 gram silver equivalent, the way that we were doing the calculation throughout the whole. And, you know, big, I think just under half of it was carried by obviously the really high grade thing. But like Kelly said, it is amazing when you look at the table, just straight throughout, there's mineralized areas.
So, you know, what kind of stands out to me is that if it's in the host rock as well, and that's pretty indicative of a pretty powerful system of mineralization there, Kelly. And it sounds to me like you guys might just be on the top of the system. And what is this? What do you think it is? Like, is it you're hitting veins on quartz veins, but with significant amount of massive sulfide? So what's the mineralization theories you've got? This, I know it's obviously very early in the.
Well, the neat thing about this is there's a lot of surface exposure. So we have had some smart people on the ground. It's kind of one of those funny mixed deposits. Both Matt and I will say that anyone we've spoken to gives different deposit and mine analogies. But really what it looks like is Keno Hill, but it's in a different host rock. It looks like some of the Peruvian carbonate hosted lead zinc silver mineralization. It looks like some of the Mexican VMS type deposits with sort of carbonate host rock system. It looks honestly a lot like an orogenic gold system to me, without much gold. So there's a lot of different things that you could put into a basket of, but it's unique for the Appalachians, which is where we're looking right now and where we're finding this mineralization, which is always a fun thing to find something that no geologist can agree on what it actually is and what the main analogies are. It means potentially we're onto something new, and new can be a very good thing. It can be a challenging thing, but in our case, we're seeing significant mineralization associated with something that doesn't really fit into any of the conventional checklists.
Getting back to something Matt said earlier about, you know, string of pearls kind of situation. massive sulfides don't usually show up alone. They're not orphans. So it looks like you have a powerful system there, and lots of potential for it to hang together into something quite exciting.
Yeah, and we alluded to it in our release today. We've drilled quite a few holes beyond what's been press released. We have been seeing very nice mineralization that I think will coincide nicely with the hole that was released today, showing that this is expanding along strike. It's potentially adding theoretical tons to the system, and we are now we've done quite a bit of structural work, and I think that we've sort of unlocked the mystery of this particular zone. And as we've been drilling the last 6 or 8 holes, we've been validating that thesis. So we're now seeing quite an impressive potential ore shoot developing that seems to be traceable and consistent, which is always good when you're talking about potential mining in the future.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and if it's a VMS system and such a widespread soil anomalies, you could be looking at multiple intrusions.
Yeah, call it a VMS-like system. It's just honestly, it's a funny one. There's so many different analogs for it. It's really unknown, but Keno Hill is the one that pops up the most.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Keno Hill then. What?
Over to you, Matt. You're the Keno Hill wizard at this point.
Well, I guess the biggest thing to realize about Keno Hill, again, in that kind of string of pearls analogy, right, is that it wasn't for the most part anything more than what we found, like that kind of a vein without the copper. But you had these swarms of 10 to 30 centimeter veins that carried really huge amount of sulfides, a lot of zinc, a lot of galena in some areas. I mean, you look at Alexco right now, and their pre-fees, if you don't worry, or feasibility when you don't think about the mining royalties and stuff. I mean, that's a couple $100 million NAV on an area that's been drilled for been mined for 120 years. And so that's kind of just one area, and they actually do a really good job of kind of showing comparable
mineralization. Hill,
mineralization.
did they mine in those horsetail kind of veins, or was there a bigger intrusion below that caused the veining?
So there's big intrusions that people hypothesize are involved or potentially the source of mineralization, but it was a vein hosted system. So they mined out these pods and these quite narrow, sort of one, actually less than that, half a meter to 3 to 5 meter veins. On occasion, if you look at Alexco's results, they've drilled up to sort of 20 meters of mineralization. But conventionally, it was pickaxe driven, very, very high grade, very similar to the Mexican projects that you're so familiar with, Alan. These very, very dense, narrow, pseudo vein hosted systems that have a whole lot of value per ton.
Yeah.
And was extremely shallow. I mean, relative to what the other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of similarities to kind of the Kootenay region, the core region in Idaho. But I mean, in general, Keno Hill only went down to 350 meters, and there was a gap of about 100 meters between the two major zones. There was kind of a more lead strong galena hosted part, which was kind of 70 to 150 meter level, and then it came later. It was about 220 to 350. So you're not talking like really
was
deep.
In that deeper stuff, was that more?
That was a more zinc kind of dominant, kind of rock that didn't have as much lead, and had much higher grade silver actually as you got deeper in the system.
Okay, and so this result, I was looking at the cross section. Let me get it up here again, and yeah, you're pretty shallow there so far. What's the depth drilled so far?
I think the vertical depth is here, Kelly, 50 meters, maybe.
The vertical depth that we've drilled down to date would be sort of 250 meters or so. But Alan, this is literally from a rock sample that I took on surface. the mineralization starts right at surface. One of the first releases that we put out was hole 18, and that was the mineralization started at 3 meters below the surface.
Is that
It's
oxidized copper and sulfides there, or?
exactly, so it's oxidized copper. The oxidation extends to maybe 20 meters or so, where we're seeing malachite, we're seeing some really nice chalcocite. But it's interesting, and this is within
That's
a
a
quartz
lot of
vein that,
sulfides in there too.
oh, it's a very pretty, like honestly, that was just there last week or so.
Yeah,
And it's very impressive on surface, to be honest with you.
yeah, honestly, you can kind of walk along the trench, and I think that because it's weathered a little bit since the trench was done, but you know, it's even a better theory as you trench and you wait a season, like wait the winter, let the snow kind of wipe off all the mud and let it be there for a bit, and you kind of just see the blue highlights on the rock. And then you can kind of just see the sparkling galena, and then the kind of the sulfides sporadically throughout. So it's definitely even for a non-geologist, it's a pretty fun walk around.
So on the trenching, and okay, so lay out the surface anomaly, if you will. What work had been done over what area, Kelly?
Sure. So this was found by a gentleman named Tony Kearney, who was the vice president or vice principal of the local school and a weekend prospector. So he and his son were out for a drive on the road that we're currently drilling on, and they saw some green rock, sampled it, staked a little bit, sent it over, brought it over to Altius, who was based in St. John's, who essentially immediately after assaying bought the project from him for some cash and a royalty. We're currently logging out of Tony's, it's quite a big garage, but we're logging out of Tony's house really at the moment. He's very much involved in the project, which is awesome for me, because we've got someone with real skin in the game that is helping us along. So basically, upon initial discovery of this outcrop, which is in an area that we call the North Zone to date, Altius started a significant soil sampling campaign targeting basically the whole property, identified, so up in the North Zone, about 9 kilometers of linear soil anomalies, and in the South Zone, which is where we're currently focused, about 3 kilometers of linear soil anomalies. And that was a mix of copper, lead, zinc, antimony. And because they were just using XRF analyses on their soil samples, they didn't get much. It's not a very reliable tool for silver. What they did on the second year was went back and did some tighter infill space samples, and noticed significant soil anomalies as well, silver anomalies as well, up to about 650 grams per ton of silver in soils, which is very significant. They did also a significant grab sampling and prospecting program, samples up to 6,000 grams per ton silver equivalent, and also did a significant trenching program from north to south of the project with some very stellar results as well.
So was that one line, or did they do?
That was basically anywhere that there was significant exposure of rock and grab samples.
Oh, okay.
Across that 12-kilometer stretch, they started a little trench. Where we're drilling right now is called Trench 1, significantly larger than the other trenching because the surface exposure is so great, because the grabs are so great.
So
that's where
really like selective. It was more selected because of access.
Absolutely selected because of both access. There's honestly great access everywhere there, but selected on the backs of both access and geochem results. And Altius is not a junior company. They're not out there to
High grade the results.
They don't care. Like, they have no incentive to high grade results.
No, they're very sharp folks that work there, and they do fantastic work, you know, preparing things for drilling and then drilling, of course.
Yeah, we were very pleased, and really, like, we looked at this project, or Matt really looked at it in detail about a year ago or so, and it was kind of a no-brainer to get involved here. Silver was moving, copper was moving, and this looked like it had district scale potential.
Now part of the world was starting to open up for exploration, for enthusiasm. I'm interested, Kelly, in the linear soil samples there. Do those make sense based on your fault, your structural interpretation?
Absolutely, they do. So what's really neat is you can even see it from the lakes in the region. So basically, it's this big, long 9-kilometer one to the north, and then to the south, there's a little bit of a jog for the what we call the south zone. And what's really cool is you can actually see that fold. There's a bend occurring, even defined by the lakes in the area. It's such a unique, interesting macro, if you like sort of macro big picture geology. This is very, very exciting. And then on the small scale, everything sort of mimics what you're seeing on the big scale, which is it's typical of geology, but it's nice to be able to see everything come together in a way that we were kind of hoping for here.
And now,
And to speak, and we've also actually just finished a big structural interpretation. We had a consultant from SRK up on site for about 10 days. And his goal there was structural interpretation of this mineralization. Some great insights were garnered from that study, and we'll continue to utilize those interps going forward as we advance both on this area that we're currently drilling, but also regionally as we start looking towards the north zone, trying to find a few more of these shoots.
is there something on the website with that fault interpretation that you can
Not yet,
overlay
but
onto
we are
this?
working on a technical presentation and technical summary that will help speak to that. We would love to see some more assays to validate our hypotheses, but based on, it's a really visual system. So we have a good feel for what's going to be in the ground, and we're doing oriented drilling throughout this whole program. So we're able to tie things together quite nicely and correlate that with the surface exposure to really get a good 3D proper structural picture of what's happening here.
That's really exciting to me, Kelly, because if you've got the three combination, you've got the soil anomaly, you've got the structural story, and now you've got the truth machine, and they're all pointing in the same direction. Me, I like to do a little bit of arm waving based on realistic geology and what you're doing there. So putting that whole package together, I think would be fantastic for people to get an idea of the scope of what you're looking at. That's a big anomaly. And now it confirms your structural analysis, and the drilling kind of is confirming everything.
Exactly.
When do you think you'll have that ready, Matt or Kelly?
Yeah, so I guess we've been kind of the last 2 weeks we finally got some results, as most people in the world, let alone in Canada, are kind of experiencing the backup in labs. So the assay results coming back at you. So I think that every time we think about kind of putting something new up, we're waiting for a few more, and then it gets delayed, or then it comes in. So we're trying to make sure that when we put something out, like not a lot of new things have been put on the site, for example, because the story is kind of just developing. We think that we're going to have a pretty good idea at the end of this program. I don't think we're going to wait that long, but to kind of give a little bit better perspective of things, and to kind of just add a little bit of confirmation, like Kelly said, to our theories, I think that we're basically working on it now. A bunch of conferences coming up, a bunch more technical talks. I think that we'd like to have more current information for that. But yeah, so I basically just say we're working on that now.
Yeah, but the
drilling, we'll probably do a technical webinar, Alan, once we have once we've got a bunch of holes in, and we can actually put things into 3D context and display that on both the regional scale, and then bring it down to the micro scale as well. I think that'd be really neat. And I know it's been a success with some other stuff that we've done. So yeah, we'll definitely look to do that in the coming months or so.
Yeah, the drilling will help you put together things, the ultimate thing, but from a big picture perspective, you've already put the soil chem anomaly out, and you know, overlaying that with your fault, your structural story. I don't know if many people would care, but I certainly would, because it starts to help me see the size potential.
So actually our current presentation on the website it's got quite a bit of that. It's neat because we sort of go from soils into rocks, into analogies. So you can sort of see the evolution of what we've been doing. And then Matt put a really cool slide together showing the comparison of our 12-kilometer strike with the 12-kilometer Keno Hill district that shows better than 200 million ounces of silver being produced in that same size and same area.
That will help a lot. I'll have to take a look at the corporate presentation. I invite everybody watching this video to do the same, because, you know, the question that I think you're probably facing right now is, well, you know, it's under a meter, blah, 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 you know, that you want to start showing the size potential is there as well. The analogy to Keno Hill and what they mine there obviously is quite important, but you know, we're full of naysayers these days, and you know, it'd be nice to put some data out there that we can sort of point to and say, well, you know, here's the structural story. Here you've seen the soil anomaly. Now we're seeing it in the drill holes. Look at, you know, that's some hot juices there, man.
Yeah, so Matt, you can touch on the antimony too, just because it's really fun that no one ever thinks about. But even the two of us were like, wow, it's that valuable, because it's really coupled with the silver here. It's neat.
So what was the grade of antimony?
2.47%.
Okay, now tell
I think.
us.
And when we looked for the price quote, I had to actually double take when we saw it and we were given it, which is $5.50 a pound. And so copper is $4.13 today, I think. And so antimony is more valuable than copper. And I mean, in the world of climate change, it's really good fire retardant. It's used to put flames out. So apparently that's a good thing right now. And then I think it's pretty good for batteries as well. I'm still learning about what it's one of those metals, kind of an oddity, but definitely a fire retardant. Definitely, I think it's used in batteries and things like that. But it's a big grade, and one of the things that the Keno analogy does do.
Apart from the what it's used for, what's the trend in the price of it been like? Has it been on the upswing, or?
It did so. It did that, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and obviously we have no clue about recoveries here either too, Alan. So
no.
But certainly this was actually Altius that really brought it to our attention that was the pitch. It was a silver, copper, lead, zinc, antimony project that they told us about. So even as we were doing our homework, we're like, it's weird, but it seems to be quite interesting.
And the antimony tends to correlate pretty well with the silver as well, which is so you kind of, it's a good way to kind of see it. Although Kelly did warn me that by touching antimony, that's not a good idea. So, so don't handle the core too much.
Okay, so Kelly, before I let you guys go, I'm looking at the cross section here in your image, figure 2, I think, figure 3, and so the green, that's your mineralized area there, if you will. But really, how much are those centers between the holes? You've only drilled a half a dozen holes there, it looks like.
Yeah, let me pull it up just so I can not speak out of turn here. Yeah, so the greenish yellow, that's our host rock. That's the dolostone. And what's neat is if we put sort of a 2 gram per ton silver, I call it a cutoff, but basically it's the number that we actually bother showing on this map. I use 5 in this case. If we did 2, that every single one of those yellow intervals would be running or would have a highlight point on this map. So the
So
spacing,
it's distributed throughout the drill hole.
for the most part, it's not completely fully mineralized, but there's a whole lot of mineralization spread throughout that overall interval. Those are about 35 to 40 meters spacing in between the hole that we released, 23, and the hole below it, 24, and the hole above it, which would be 002. What's also neat is on this section, so we reported this whole, the vertical one there, SP21008, in our first press release of results, which was a few weeks ago. What's exciting about that is at depth, we actually hit more mineralization than we expected. And one of the theories that we've been working on that's actually proving to be quite exciting is towards the contact of that purple unit,
That's
which is
the argillite?
the argillite, exactly. There seems to be a focus of mineralization and mineralizing fluids. And you'll see that in upcoming holes where when we do additional cross sections, you can see an abundance of veining and sulfides that come in just above that unit. So
At the contact between the it's at the contact, right? With the argillite?
exactly between the argillite there and the dolostone, which is our host rock.
And is there some way does this show up in geophysics or anything, the argillite, so that you can trace that contact?
It does, exactly. And that was a great question. And it's given us some awesome targets. So what's really neat about it is the argillite. So there's been a lot of work done here. So IP has been done basically through the whole soil stretch. What was initially very disappointing is that the IP is such a broad anomaly that it doesn't really give us much in terms of drilling target. It doesn't say, here's your target, go poke a hole here. It just says this area is chargeable for a few hundred meters. But what's neat about it is that the argillite is picked up in a big way by the IP because of all the clay content within that unit. And what we've noted is that where we're getting our best mineralization, so imagine this is a usual contact, where we're getting our best stuff, there's a jog in the system. So it pops up and you can see the structural bend that comes in over this whole district. We see that on the outcrop, but we also see it in the IP very well. We see it in the drilling data. Once we've done our 3D modeling, you can see this argillite contact bends around. And what's really exciting for us is up to the north, there's a number of these bends and jogs that are really visible in the IP data and gives us a bunch of targets. And actually, to be honest with you, our northern drilling that we did, part of that scout program of phase 1, was probably too far to the east to actually even intercept those flexures and jogs. We were just drilling under the geochem anomaly. So I think that the north zone, which is significantly larger in terms of strike length, might actually even bear better fruit than the south zone here.
Wow. And so you've got the, in that cross section, you've got the marble up here, and down here you have the argillite, and it looks like that argillite might be flattening out. Is that sort of, does it look like that could expand close to surface and then you follow downward? Is it plunging in that other direction?
So exactly. So it seems to be plunging in sort of a chute, dipping relatively shallowly, but it is very structurally complex here. There is a lot of folding that's happened. What's exciting is that mineralization seems to be post-folding, so it won't actually be affected by the folds. But the rocks themselves are quite messed up, to be honest with you. On surface, it's quite a puzzle to unravel. And as we were continuing to get this 3D data from drilling, we're getting a much better handle on how it's all going to tie together. But in terms of blowing up, I truly don't even have an answer for that yet. But it does look to be quite consistent, at least so far.
So
in terms
that
of
argillite package in the core looks like it's coming like this. And do you have a way to trace it as it continues both vertically or down as well as along? Like, does it go like this, or does it kind of go like this and then it's open at depth?
Oh, it's definitely open at depth. We have, so the IP data, and you know this too, as you do the inversions and sort of the depth extent of the IP, it kind of weakens in terms of its validity and usefulness.
You can only see down a few hundred meters.
And really, when you're inverting, like, you can kind of see trends, but it's not completely accurate. So we do have that information that shows that there's a gentle dip. It's not, it doesn't look like it's fully sloping and cutting anything off, and does look like it's open, but really we have the drill there, so we'll be able to tell quite shortly what that really looks like at depth.
Well, that's that adds to my enthusiasm for what you found, because you've got quite a broad zone of mineralization there, and it seems to be that you can follow it along the contact, and even what you have above the contact is quite exciting as well. So maybe that thing is got some legs to it.
We'll see with future releases, Alan, but I think we've got about around 28 or so holes at the lab at the moment. The first little bit, like we mentioned, we're scout. The balance of the holes really that are at the lab are targeted drill holes focused on areas surrounding known mineralization. So we genuinely expect some fun stuff to come in the coming, however long the labs take, in the coming months, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, well, I think people should pay attention to that, because it looks like you've got a targeting method there, and you've got a big anomaly, and you're getting a handle on the structural story. So before we go, let's just run down. You've released 2 holes so far, and how many have you completed? How many are, what kind of schedule can we sort of look for? I know it's hard to speculate on that now with the delays at the lab, but let's have a bit of an idea of what's done and what's pending, and also, can you work there all year round?
So we've put out, so on the 27th, we put out 9 holes. And in this release, we put out 3 in the bottom of the old one. So in terms of the schedule, I don't, truthfully, I've been looking at companies as an investor primarily for 12 years, and I've never really liked 1 hole or 2 holes at a time. I don't think that it gives you a proper context. We put this out because the grades are so significant that there's a point being made here. I think it just that was different than the last one. So there's kind of batches that we would expect, I guess. I would hope that we've caught up to the lab a little bit, so that kind of on a 3 to 5 week basis, you can start to have, news flow come out and get through there. So we have, like Kelly said, 20 some odd holes in the lab. I think there should probably be 26 or 27 left by the time we're all said and done. I would expect that we're going to have, I've been caught saying when we're going to have news over the last 5 months, and people get a little upset about that, which is fair. So I'm just going to say that there's probably 3 or 4 news releases that will come between now and probably the end of January, I want to say, in terms of the results of drilling. The labs are quite backed up. There's a lot of money that went into Newfoundland. We sent our assays 3 hours south. We just throw them, it's quite convenient to do it, and nice to do it in province as well, but there are delays and backups. The great thing about this project, which I think we've alluded to a couple times, is you could actually fly into the airport of St. Anthony and jump in a car and be on site in 40 minutes. St. Anthony's on the northwest point, essentially, of the peninsula. It's incredible access. You drive off of a highway onto kind of another highway, and then onto 2 dirt roads, and you're there. It's great. It's actually probably easier even in the winter, because you could snowmobile to where the drill site is. It'd be pretty easy throwing things on tracks, no problem. So yes, you can work there all year round. We're gonna pause and let the assays catch up. No one will even realize that we're pausing because of the lab delays. We kind of want to see, we got to see what's going on a little bit. And so that's why we actually stopped it at that 8,500 meter expansion. We have another $1.5 million of flow, 1.2 million, something like that, to spend on a drill program as a follow-up drill program without touching, and 1.5 to 2 million of hard dollars still in the bank. So we're not really in a rush. We'd like to kind of have things catch up. And then, as you kind of have alluded to, kind of chase down plunge or kind of follow up on a few different targets. So we could work, we could start a drill program quickly. We could start a drill program in the spring. We're kind of still putting that together.
Yeah, the funny thing about this is Newfoundland is conventionally very boggy in lots of the areas that people are focused for gold. and that makes winter the better drilling season. For us, it's really irrelevant. You can drive in.
Yeah,
I went up with an SUV to the drill site with no issues whatsoever, and I was right beside the drill. So it's very, very easy. There's a road throughout. Look on Google Earth, you can actually see the road cutting. You can even see our trenches actually, I think, on Google Earth at this point. It's neat. It's very, very easy.
And yeah, Alan, I was just there, and I mean, you're driving, it's flat. You don't have to worry about flooding. I mean, if you thought it, like you're not too close to a town, you're going to bother anyone, but you're close enough that you can kind of stay there and have good resources nearby. You have power nearby, water nearby. It's kind of like if you wanted to build a mine somewhere, it is right up there on places, at least that I've visited, of a spot that I'd want to put something. And
you've got great people. There's such a nice group of
nice people. And very supportive community, and yeah, it's been really great.
Well, when I asked to have this interview, I was really impressed by the grades. As Kelly and I have talked, I'm even more impressed by the structural story and where the mineralization is in relation to the rock packages in the contacts, and that you can see that key contact area. So yeah, you guys are off to a damn good start there.
Thanks, Alan.
And I suspect we'll be talking a lot more in the future as you guys continue to put this story together, but seems like it's coming together pretty nicely between the soil, between the structural story, now the drilling. Things are moving along quite nicely, I would imagine, Kelly.
Absolutely are. We're very pleased, and we're excited about the future here.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to more drill results and more, the structural story. The anomaly's already big, and now you've got a nice growing high-grade anomaly with the truth machine. So we'll be talking more in the future. Thanks again, guys, for giving us some time here to delve deeper into the story.
Right on. Thanks so much, Alan. Always appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Alan. Look forward to talking again.
Okay, I'm going to close it off. Just give me a minute here, guys. There you go, folks. We've uncovered another nice story for you here. I first started covering it a few months ago when I had an online conference that the Sterling guys participated in. And now the stocks got cheaper and they've delivered with the truth machine. And it looks like they're delivering with the truth machine in something that could grow quite spectacularly. I love to see that high grade. I love copper these days. There's the antimony angle to it as well. And zinc. And you've got an analogy to a pretty big and important mine there. So a lot of the elements of what you want to look for in the company are coming together for these guys. I suggest you do some homework. I'm going to do some more homework. Good people involved. The Altius guys did good work. Kelly and the team at Sterling are doing good work. And the truth machine's starting to sing. So stay tuned for more. As always, this show is for information purposes only. It's important for you to do your homework and speak to your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. But I certainly invite you to look more closely at this company. They've got a very reasonable valuation, cheap valuation, I would argue, and a good looking future in the near term. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.